I'm April from Teach Travel Read. Welcome back to my channel. The sweet sounds of summer. Peace, relaxation. But if you're anything like me, you're still thinking about school. Unfortunately, it happens. That's okay. We can do it. This series is going to be all about classroom management, one of the most crucial aspects to make your year thrive. It's not easy, and one thing they don't tell us as undergrads going into teaching that we have to start over every single year. Every year, it's a different group of students. Every year, we gotta train and teach those kids, no matter if you're a kindergarten teacher all the way through high school. So we're going to focus on several different things throughout this series of videos about classroom management. But for today's video, we are going to focus on a positive classroom environment. A positive classroom environment is the foundation for a solid, successful classroom. If you don't have this foundation to start the year, the rest of the year is not going to go smoothly. Now, let's be real. Sometimes no matter what we do, there's chaos in the classroom. There's going to be disruptions. There's going to be disagreement or even sometimes a lack of respect. It's frustrating, okay? So I completely understand that. But don't worry, I've been there, and today we are going to tackle this together. So grab your favorite beverage, sit on back, maybe even grab a notebook, and let's get started. Okay, so first up, when setting up that positive classroom environment, we want to think about organization and decor. And you may think, why do we want to focus on that when I need to work on having my students build their relationships with each other? We're going to get to that. But first, we want to think about how, when those students first walk in from that very first moment, what are they going to see? A classroom in chaos and disarray leads to chaos and disarray versus a beautifully organized classroom, well designed, is going to create a more calming and organized manner for your students. We want our classrooms to be welcoming and engaging for our students. So there are different ways that you can do this. One way I like to do it is by arranging the desk into groups. So depending on your classroom setup, maybe you have tables, maybe you have individual desks, maybe you have kind of a partner group. Kind of depends on the furniture that is provided to you, but since I'm provided with desks, I like to arrange them within groups of 4 or 5. I have done more than 5 in the past, and I have learned that that does not work well. Too many in a group causes that chaos, which was the opposite of what I was trying to do. So I tend to go towards 4 or 5 in a group, and I'll show you the layout here in just a moment of how I like to design my classroom. We want to think about when we arrange the furniture, how are we going to make sure there are clear pathways for ourselves and the students to move around the room. If everything's kind of clumped together or is scattered out, again, that in our minds, subconsciously, we don't even realize that that's happening, but it's creating that chaos in our minds, so therefore it's going to lead to some more chaos. We also want to think about where we have areas set up in the classroom for different activities. So maybe you have a reading nook in one spot, maybe you have a science area in another spot, maybe you have a calm down corner in another spot, maybe you have your own teacher area, because we know we need that, set up in a designated location. So think about how you're going to organize the classroom so everything works well throughout, and it's easy to find the materials and supplies you need, as well as the students know exactly where to go for different activities. Okay, so within my classroom, my furniture is still arranged. So the custodians have not cleaned my classroom yet this summer, but that's totally fine. And so you can kind of see exactly how my classroom is arranged. So I do have my table groups here. The chairs are just stacked. That was what the students did the last day of school, is they stacked all the chairs. But you can see I do create it so there's a nice, easy way that we can walk around. We have our front meeting area for when we do morning meetings or whole group instruction types of things. So I have everything is still set up how it was throughout the school year. Sometimes I change up the arrangement here and there throughout the school year, but this is basically how it is. San's dog, she's just here with me because it's summer. So another part of when we're thinking about our classroom environment, creating a very positive environment, we want to think about our decorations. And when I'm talking about decorations, I'm a person who's very minimalistic. I don't like everything to be covered. I don't want all the walls to be covered. I don't want tons of colors everywhere because, again, that leads to chaos. So the more you have on the walls, the more distracting it is for your students, the harder it is to keep that classroom management under control. And again, it seems like a weird thing to have to say, but it's true. I've actually had parents who come into my room for back to school night and they're like, wow, I love your room. And I think to myself, I don't have any decorations, but I've learned over the years it's because they want that for their children. They want that minimalism because when they see really brightly colored classrooms with a lot happening on the walls, a lot of decorations, a lot of colors, it's very distracting and hard for kids to focus. So when we look at trends of colors and we see a lot of the boho natural types of trends, it's because it's much more calming for students. So I'm personally very minimalistic when it comes to my decorations. I love black and white. Those are my two favorite colors. And then I just add in some pops of color here and there throughout the classroom to kind of complement that. I did recently just purchase some new decor to put up around the classroom. Again, I wouldn't use all different parts of this. It's really just picking and choosing what I want. But I want this little light bulb theme from Schoolgirl Style. I found this recently, and so I see there are some pops of color here, but thinking about what can I do to incorporate this into my classroom, but again, keep it so that it's not overwhelming and distracting for the students. Okay, so as you can see, my decor is very much, lots of black and white, very minimalistic type of decor. I do keep it like that. I do have more things posted throughout the school year, obviously. In terms of decor, we don't have to take everything off of our walls for the summer. So I know some people don't have that luxury and have to do more throughout, but we do not have to take things down. So you can see I just have borders. I have some posters over here, again with the diversity. One thing I do want to share in terms of when I'm talking about the decors, you can see that all of my bulletin board walls are plain, and they're like that all the time. So years ago, a fire marshal came through our building and said there's too much paper on the walls, and so people had to start using less paper. I actually have loved it because I used to completely cover bulletin boards. That rule's already set when I started working in this building. And so I love it because one, it's less work for me to have to deal with bulletin board paper, but two, I do think it helps with that calm and clean look less is more when it comes to that. So I keep that completely off the walls. I don't do any bulletin board paper anywhere. Here on my cabinets in the back of the room is where I keep my word wall throughout the year that the students can reference. So as we do different things, I have that there. Now, the other thing I want to share is when it comes to putting up your information in the classroom, make sure that what you're putting up for the students is useful for them. So when we think about in terms of in the elementary school, sometimes we just want to put up all the things, and we got to think about what is most useful for the students. What can they use as a reference as they're learning? So when we're using anchor charts, think about just at that moment in time, what anchor chart can you put up? I do use a word wall in 5th grade where we put up words, vocabulary words, and Greek, Latin roots that we have practiced, and the students reference that all the time. That is a good use of that space. You also want to make sure everything stays nice and neat and organized. So when you're organizing your materials, don't just throw things around the classroom. Again, seeing the chaos creates the chaos. So you want to think about, how can I put my materials specifically in a place? I have Sterilite 3-drawer systems where I pull out the drawers to put things in. I have a label on the front, and that creates a beautiful organized system. The students will then follow step and see, oh, I need to work on my organization too. About organization in the classroom, and the more things are organized, the more calm and easy it is for not only us and the students, just life in general. So I actually have things organized specifically for myself back here in my teacher area. I keep different things on hand. As you can see, I don't have any labels for this one yet, but I do have some labels, and these are available for purchase in my TPT store. You can check those out down below. They're editable. I have snarky comments on mine. So like, for example, on it says Monday, time to grade all the papers that sat in my bag over the weekend. Like, just funny things. I would find humor in as a teacher, but some of my students, when they read them, they think they're funny too. But I do have organization things for the students as well. So over here, I actually have some turn-in trays. So I have 3 trays again where they turn in those materials that they need to turn in for me. Again, I have some funny sayings on here. So like this one, yeah, if you could put your name on your paper, that'd be great. I do have one alluding to a Taylor Swift song and one to Harry Potter on there, again, in my TPT store. And then I also have this. So I've done mailboxes, return folders in a lot of different ways over the years. This has become the easiest when it comes to space-wise, very easy to be seen, literally right there. But again, they have to take the responsibility to go pull those materials out of their folder. You could also do something like that for turning in if you want it sorted by the student as opposed to, or even by subject, as opposed to a Sterilite drawer. Again, another option for you. Also think about where you're going to put supplies. Are the students holding their own supplies? Are you sharing supplies? I have a system where we do both things. Some things they do individually in their desk, some things we share as a class. And so thinking about where we're going to store all of those things. Again, making sure things are labeled and neatly organized for the students to be able to find. This will help them with their organization skills as well and keep that calm demeanor within the classroom environment. Now, in terms of keeping things organized and making sure that responsibility is being followed, expectations, I do have these drawers, and this is actually from a former colleague. She actually had her room set up like that, and I was like, oh my god, I love that. So we actually have little bins within there that have crayons and markers. I have some other drawers that have extra supplies, pencils, pens. We have scissors, all kinds of things within these drawers as well to help us with that organization. Again, creating that calm atmosphere as to what we need to do in the classroom. Now, we also want to think about how are we creating a warm and inclusive environment for our students. So every morning I stand at the door and I greet my students as they walk in. I say good morning, address them by name, try to make sure I'm smiling. Sometimes at 7:30, that's not as easy on certain days, but I want to be there because I want to create that environment where they're welcomed in. That may be the first good morning or smile they've seen yet. You never know what a student is walking into the classroom feeling. Okay, so here I am outside my classroom. In full disclosure, it is summer break, so things look maybe a little bit different than typical. But when my students arrive in the morning, I'm literally standing right here, ready to greet them as they walk in the door. Smile, good morning, hello, say their name, etc. Just that simple gesture sets that positive tone for the day. If I'm walking in at the same time as my students, that sets a very different tone for the day. If I'm sitting off in the corner scowling, that's going to set a very different tone for the day. Okay, again, it's not a perfect science, but all of these things will lead up to creating that positive classroom environment. You also want to think about creating a class mission statement or a class motto for your students to focus on. So think about a set of values, work on it together within the first few weeks of school, and have the students come up with it with you. You can definitely steer them towards certain things, and depending on the age is going to make a big difference in how much they can formulate themselves and how much teacher direction they need. But think about what can you do to, again, create that inclusivity within your classroom. I like following a class constitution. Because I teach 5th grade, we focus on American history in 5th grade, and so I focus on a class constitution. And so we read through a book called We the Kids and read through the preamble. We discuss what it means based on the vocabulary and the pictures in the book. And then we write out a constitution and we come up with some words that we want to choose to really promote and focus on as our class. I write it out on a large piece of anchor chart paper and then the students sign their names. We have it displayed up on the wall and we can refer back to it all the time to make sure that we are following that constitution, those complete rules that we are expected to follow each and every day. You also want to make sure your classroom materials focus on the diversity, not only within your class, but in the world is how I see it. There's a famous phrase for reading that's talking about doors, windows, and then doors, windows, hold on. Windows, doors, and now I say the sliding glass, because you want to be able to open and go out, but also be able to see through, but being able to adjust as well. So thinking about within your classroom, do you have posters that represent diversity from around the world? Do your classroom materials represent, so the novels that you're reading in the classroom, the books in your classroom library, making sure all of those things represent diversity within the world, especially the students within your class. One year I had a student who came up to me and he goes, "Thank you." And I was like, "For what?" And he said, "Because this is the first time I've seen myself represented in a classroom library." And that was in 5th grade. That was so impactful to hear him say that, and I have made sure since then that I am always choosing books that represent all cultures from around the world. Now, in the positive classroom environment, let's talk about student ownership and responsibility. Yes, that's part of it. Okay, so when we're talking about how to give students ownership and some responsibility, a lot of times teachers go first to thinking, okay, what classroom jobs can my students do? Absolutely, have them help. Now, thinking about here in 2024, I've noticed this trend for a while. I've tried individual student jobs and I've tried team jobs. Some students take it very seriously and work really hard on it, and then other students could not care less. So I think what I'm going to try this coming school year is a helper, like maybe a couple helpers for the whole week. The students who are in charge of helping with attendance and lunch count, making sure pencils are sharpened, making sure passing out papers, just a couple students. And I'm going to try it and see if that creates a difference in our classroom environment. Stay tuned. I'll give you some feedback on how that goes. But if that's not your jam, then go for the classroom jobs. Whether you like the individual or the teamwork jobs, you do you. Another way to think about student ownership and responsibility in creating that positive environment is through the use of a morning meeting. This is something that I've done from the very beginning of my teaching career. For some reason in the past 7 years or so, it's become a huge focus in SEL. To me, it's been imperative forever, so I'm not sure what happens there where our shift went from that to only academics. Now we're going back to that. Should have been there all along. Let me get off my soapbox now. But anyways, thinking about how you can create that community for your students. So I spend time at the beginning of the year setting up and establishing those routines and expectations for our meeting and different activities that we do, things that we discuss, and things that we learn about. And then in 5th grade, I start to give some of that ownership to the students. I have them start doing some leading of morning meetings and activities, and adding that in. Again, it creates a great classroom environment. It starts the day off on the right foot by getting us all on the same page, discussing things, sharing things. It's not just talking about our agenda for the day, which is included in part of our discussion, so we know what's going on, but we also want to make sure that we're covering other things as well. This would be a great time to even have students work on setting goals. So every week we have a goal that we focus on as a class. It might be related to our class constitution. It might be related to a specific skill focus, maybe just something we need to practice as a whole in the classroom. You just never know. Sometimes we might have more than one. And so we work really hard on establishing those goals on the first day of the week and continuing to reflect on those throughout the week. Morning meetings also a great time for students to have set individual goals for themselves, whether it's just for the day, maybe for a week, or a long-term goal. Thinking about how they're setting those goals, sharing those goals, how they're doing on those goals. All of those are great ways to set up that positive classroom environment. So what I'll typically do is I write the goal up on the board for the week, and we will talk about it each day. We'll give some kudos and shout outs who's doing really well with that goal. And then if the students really are succeeding on that goal, we'll actually pull some kerplunk sticks, or maybe I give them house chips for our classroom management system so that they can earn some rewards and prizes when we do things as a whole class. Part of our morning meeting, what I'll also do is up here on the board is I will write a classroom goal, whether I come up with it, something that I think the students need to work on, or whether the students share their ideas and thoughts. We kind of will discuss it together, and then we have it up here on the board for the entire week so that we can continuously revisit and continue to work on that as much as we need to until we feel like we have mastered it. And even when I tell them, even if it's not necessarily on the board, doesn't mean that we stop working on it or stop doing it. It just means that maybe we're doing it a little bit different focus for that week. But again, having that right there on the board and referring back to that throughout the day, the week, the year helps create that positive classroom environment again. So speaking of positive reinforcement, that is the key to a positive classroom environment. If you are yelling and nagging them all the time, guess what? It's going to be like that all the time. Now, I'm not saying that you're not having to redirect students or to give warnings or disciplines in different ways. because that is real life. We do have to do that as well. But the more positive we can focus on, the more positive our classroom environment. So if you've ever heard of PBIS, the Positive Behavioral Intervention Systems, there's a ratio. When I learned about it years ago, it was 4-to-1 was the school I was at. We incorporated that. Some people use different ratios. I think 4-to-1 is good. That means 4 positives for every maybe 1 negative thing that you have to say to a student or to the class. Okay, and positive reinforcement doesn't have to necessarily be tangible things, although we know kids love stuff. So it could be praise, it's like, oh, I feel good about myself. I just got recognized for this positive thing. I have a sticker store, so when students go above and beyond or are getting good praise or are working really hard on something, I say, go pick out a sticker. They love the stickers. Anything you can put on a water bottle nowadays, that's what they love. It could also, maybe you have a treasure box and they get to pick something out of there. I do the house system, so they can go out house chips and work towards earning those points for their team. There's lots of different ways that you can get that positive reinforcement, and the more you do that, the more natural it becomes. We even do different things like recognition. So when a student does a good job, maybe we give them a round of applause, a seal of approval, and we go, or. There's just all kinds of ways that you can get positive reinforcement. So think about what would work best for you and your students, and how can you naturally incorporate those throughout your day in your classroom. To my little corner back here. Like I said, summer break, everything's put away, but I know where things are. So one of the things that we do in our classroom to really help with that team building and camaraderie is the house system, which I'm happy to do more in depth about that in the future. But what I actually started doing a couple of years ago is I found these jars at like Home Goods or someplace like that. And then I have these chips. And so every time a student gets a shout out or a compliment, I have different colors of chips and they get to drop them into here. And then we actually count and record points. And then we do a big celebration at the end of every quarter, at the end of the year, in terms of, woohoo, this group did the best, this house did the best. There's no prize. I don't give any tangible prizes for this. It's just a recognition celebration. Bragging rights is what I do, just again, to help with that team camaraderie in terms of building that up with each other. Okay, so in terms of if you do want to give a reward for a positive classroom reinforcements, this actually is designed for a calendar, and I don't use a calendar like this anymore. So I turn this into a sticker stop or sticker store, whatever you want to call it. But I have this bucket, like stickers are literally falling out of it, and I just fill it up with stickers that the kids would be interested in. They love being able to come over and pick out a sticker for recognition for something that they're doing well. Sometimes I'll say you can have add a house chip and pick out a sticker, or sometimes I say you can do one or the other, or just a sticker or just a house chip, whatever that may be. But then this is part of getting to know them and what are their interests, what types of stickers would they be most interested in working towards. That actually helps as well with the investment in it. All right, there you have it. First part of our classroom management series, a positive classroom environment. So let's recap. We want to think about how are we going to decorate and organize our classroom to lead to that calming, positive environment. We want to think about how are we going to make our classroom warm and inclusive, a very nice atmosphere for all students to feel included. We want to think about how are the students going to take that ownership and responsibility for themselves and their classroom. We want to think about that positive reinforcement. How are we going to use that to create that positive classroom environment? Have I said the word positive too much yet? And then we want to think about how we're going to make sure all students feel welcome and respected within the classroom. Thank you for watching. Remember, if you enjoyed this and you want to continue to follow and learn more on all aspects related to teaching, make sure you click the subscribe button and ring that bell so you never miss out on the latest tips and tricks. Plus, we want to be able to share our own classroom stories and things that work well for us in our classrooms. Every school, every classroom is different. So share in the comments below what works well for you and your students. The more we share, the more we can learn and grow together. Thank you for watching. See you next time. I love this journey for you.